Well, hello everyone. This is the first live stream of Engineering the Paranormal, and funny thing is I'm here in the library, and I was waiting for the room to become available, and look what I saw. Look what book I found. So I was flipping through it, and he's got a lot of pictures of himself in here. Um, but I think I'm going to check it out and read it just because. And I know my buddy Alan is watching, and look what else I found here in the library. This is Alan's book. He's a local here in Iowa, near where I live. He has written a book about his 7-year investigation into the Stagecoach Inn in Ida Grove, Iowa. I recommend you check that out. That's a good book, and he's got a follow-up book as well. So again, welcome. I am Rob with Ghost Gear, and this is my podcast, Engineering the Paranormal. The idea behind this podcast is I don't have anything planned, right? It's for you guys to interact with me, to ask technical questions about devices and how they work and how to best use them. So let's get started with any questions that you have, any questions about devices, uh, maybe some myths you want busted, or if you're just curious about how the internals of them work, kind of the engineering side, or a deep dive into the technical, I can do that as well. While I'm waiting for some questions to come through, what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about everyone's favorite tool, the K2. Um, the K2 is a single axis passive sensor. Well, it's not really a sensor, right? So let me show you this. Let's see if that comes through. You see the square on the outside of this in the traces? That is what we call a coplanar loop. And it is embedded into the circuit board. And what that does is it picks up the current that's in the air that's emitted by the EMF, and it turns that into a voltage. And that voltage is very small, and it goes into a amp. Uh-oh, my video is frozen. Am I back? Ta-da. All right, so I'm going to go through. I got somebody that's asking about compasses. So Alan and I were talking about compasses the other night, and he was asking if EMF would affect a compass. And in theory, it should not, because a EMF takes it's made up of two components, the electrical and the magnetic. So it takes, that's the EMF, electrical magnetic field. Whereas a permanent magnet is just a permanent magnet, right? A permanent magnet is like what you stick on your refrigerator. It doesn't require a battery to stick on your refrigerator, right? It's a permanent magnet. The Earth's field is also a permanent magnet. So that's how a compass works. A compass reads other permanent magnets, right? So in theory, a electromagnetic field or like an EM pump should not affect a compass. And we were talking about that because back in the old days, I guess, they used a lot of compasses to, detect anomalies, which is not a bad thing. But know that it's not going to detect EMF. It's just going to detect a disturbance in the Earth's magnetic field. Now, this happens from time to time naturally. And then there are other things that can cause that disturbance in the magnetic field, the permanent magnetic field. Um, so there is a difference. So that's why you would have an EMF meter, and that's why not a K2, but a tri-field has got a selector switch. One is for EMF and one is for magnet, because it will read permanent magnets, um, and the EMF field, the electromagnetic field. And there was another question. Let me scroll up. Oh yeah, I can talk a little bit about the Epic Box. So the Epic Box is a device that I made, and it takes in 6 environmental inputs. And of those 6 inputs, it will generate a yes or a no response. So the idea is spirits can manipulate those 6. and force it to say yes or force it to say no. I got this idea. I had access to a data logger, a very highly sophisticated data logger. Someone had about a year's worth of data and they shared it with me. And through that, I went through that and found um, some of the haunted locations versus non-haunted locations had about 6, 7 um, inputs that would change whenever there was a perceived paranormal event taking place. So out of that, I figured that these spirits can manipulate these 6, and I put that into my Epic box. Now, these same environmental readings can happen naturally in the just in our atmosphere. So that's why the Epic box will still say yes or no sometimes when you're not asking questions. I get that a lot. People are like, well, it'll say yes and I haven't asked a question yet. I'm like, well, sometimes that'll happen. So how do you differentiate between spirit activity and just the environment? I would look at how often or how you know it correlates to your questions to find what I like to call statistical significance. So if you ask a question and you come back later and ask another question, um, and you get the same response, that's probably not a random earth environmental change causing it to go off. I do know I've got videos of users using it and asking a series of questions and then going back and asking those same series of questions and getting the same response from the Epic box. So that's pretty cool. I've got people that ask questions where they already know the answer to, and the Epic box will answer correctly. Uh, so that's it in a nutshell. It does have Dave Schrader's voice. I'm not stealing it. He has licensed it to me. So it's Dave's voice saying yes or no on there. So, what other questions? If not, I'll go back into the K2 and how that works. Yeah, Rob's saying it responds to emotions. He did I don't know, a little study with it, and folks were sitting around the table. If I remember right, they were telling jokes or they were in a good mood, and the box would repeatedly respond in one way. The yeah, Rob wants his voice and Sarah's voice on there. We can do that actually. That's very easy to do. So yeah, the idea is that it is taking, you know, the energy from the atmosphere, which I do believe, and there's been studies done by the government and other not paranormal, sorry, parapsychology groups that have found that humans with some kind of telekinesis can affect uh, electronic instruments. So I figured if humans can do it, then why can't a spirit do it as well? So that's kind of the idea behind the Epic Box and why it works so well. At least I get a lot of positive feedback. I've only gotten one, believe it or not, only one negative feedback on it. It was from a gentleman over in UK that didn't really fully understand how to use it really. Um, and but most all others have been positive, so I'm very happy about that. Yeah, the old haunted YMCA, we have used it there, and it worked very well there. The spirits like to play with it. Um, but yeah, so I don't wanna make this a big commercial about ghost gear, although, I don't mind it either. But back to the K2 while we're working on some other questions. So that coplanar loop, that square that wraps around there, and yeah, I'm at a library. I would use my phone, but my phone has no reception inside this library. It sends a voltage to an amplifier, and that amplifier goes to an op amp. And what that op amp does is it controls the LEDs. So the higher the voltage it receives, the more LEDs light up. I know some folks have called the op amp a EMF sensor. It's not a sensor. There's really no such thing as a EMF sensor. You can get a Hall effect sensor, but it's not um, sensitive enough really to read what we're trying to read in the paranormal field, which is very subtle EMF changes in the environment. Um, so that's really it for the K2. There's some capacitors and resistors in there, but that's functionally how the K2 works. Now, notice where that square coplanar loop is that I talked about. When you're holding a K2, right, it's in the palm of your hand. It's not at the tip where a lot of people think it is. It's actually down here in the palm of your hand. And that's because the K2 was originally designed for contractors to find electrical wiring in walls, like a stud finder. So it was meant to go up against the wall this way and read the wall and look for a live wire so they knew not to drill there or do whatever they had to do hunting for a live wire. And, the two famous plumbers, they used it as plumbers to look for live wires in walls, and they got their TV show, Ghost Hunters, and they started using it for ghost hunting. And ever since then, it's been really popular for ghost hunting. But yeah, so they can be manipulated. I have reverse engineered it, and I know that it can send a negative voltage to the op amp. And when that happens, the op amp goes crazy. It locks up, and it will either lock up and do nothing, or it will lock up and light all red, right? And you'll never know the difference. You don't know if you're picking up some strange anomaly or if this thing is just kind of glitched out. So that's one watch out for the K2. Keep that in mind as you're using it. If you see this thing like peg out and hold for a second or two, it's probably glitched out. Yeah, I'm not either. I prefer the tri-field. The other thing with a tri-field is it is a three-axis active sensor versus the passive sensor here in the K2. An active sensor is going to be more reliable because of the way that it works. What it does is it sends a voltage through an inductor, and that inductor generates a field around it, and it wants to hold the current steady. So when another EM field enters it, it changes the balance, and it wants to hold the current steady. So the sensors read the current and how much more current it has to put in or how much less. And it'll say, okay, there's an EM field here. And that's how you detect the EM field. Uh, I, I don't know. It's designed to sweep side to side. So I don't think, that's a, don't move it fast though. Remember I was talking about magnetic field and the Earth is a permanent magnet, right? If you move a K2 too fast, it will see that permanent magnet as a oscillating field. It'll make it look like it's an electromagnetic field. It'll have a sine wave this way, sorry. Um, and it will fake out the K2, and the K2 will show lights when really you're just moving it too fast through a magnetic field. You could do the same thing with a refrigerator magnet. You can grab a refrigerator magnet and hold it under your K2, and wiggle it a little bit, and the K2 will go off. I have been told that there are some folks out there that do that with a small magnet. They'll put it on their finger on the bottom of the K2, and you just got to wiggle it just ever so slightly, and you'll get that K2 to light up. So let me see if I missed any questions up here while I'm waiting for some questions to come through. Oh, somebody said something about a REM pod. If an electrical outlet is not grounded, can that affect or interfere with K2 or REM pod? It could with a REM pod because of the way the REM pod works. So the REM pod uses a 555 timer in a stable mode, which means it's just constantly blasting out a frequency. It's just blasting out energy, and they connect that to an antenna, and that antenna is blasting out energy, and it's at a constant frequency. When you move your hand near that antenna, you change the frequency, and that's what the microcontroller in there, a PIC, a microcontroller in the case of a REM pod or the Junior Thurman, um, and that will see that there's a change in the frequency and alert you. The bigger the change, the more lights light up, and it'll respond to EMF as well. That's why a walkie-talkie will set it off. So you got to be careful with that. I was at one location, and there was a REM pod on the bed, and they had a plasma ball in the middle of the room. and nothing was happening, right? It was kind of a slow night, and they were asking questions, and I touched the plasma ball, and the REM pod went off because my body became the antenna, and a huge antenna, and just sent over that EMF over to the REM pod. So I was playing with them. So as they were asking questions, I was tapping that plasma ball. And at the end, I told them, I said, "Did you guys not notice that every time that went off was the same time I was pressing the plasma ball?" So I had to tell on myself to clear everything out with them. But yeah, you just got to be careful with a REM pod. They work right, but you know you got to be smart and understand how they work. And when you do get a REM pod hit, you got to make sure that nothing natural or nothing explainable caused it. And if you get to the point where you can't explain why it went off, then continue investigating. Do I believe EVPs come in specific frequencies? I don't know because there's hasn't been enough data captured for EVPs. A lot of people capture EVPs, but nobody actually, that I'm aware of, studies them or does any kind of deep dive into them. You would have to do like a spectral analysis on them to find out what frequencies are in there. I do know I have done that with some of my personal EVPs and found very strange harmonics with an EVP versus when a person talks. Um, so, you know, a lot of people say, well, that was background noise. That was a person in the other room, what have you. But the harmonic frequencies is really weird for an EVP versus a person talking. Will I ever have a piece of equipment that could prove an afterlife? Oh man, that would be cool, wouldn't it? But I don't think, you know, the diehard skeptics would still dismiss it. We would have to know more about ghosts, honestly. And that's one thing where I think MUFON does a better job than we do. And I've said this before, because MUFON will go in and document everything, right? They will sit down with the eyewitnesses, document what day they saw it, what time they saw it, what mood they were in when they saw it, right? The weather outside when they saw it. Sadly, I see a lot of paranormal ghost hunter investigators, because MUFON is still paranormal as well, but they just run in with a K2 meter and start waving it around. You know, they don't even ask a lot of questions. So I would like to see more documentation, to be honest with you. And through that documentation, I think we just start correlating things and finding and get away from the myths. There's a lot of myths and beliefs out there that people adhere to, that we can't really, you know, prove one way or the other because there's not enough data for it. So that's one thing that I'm trying to do with Ghost Gear is create devices that add value in the realm of paranormal research to collect data. And that's I was talking with Rob and Sarah earlier today, and that's what I've got happening for next year. I've got some devices that are coming out that will aid in collecting a lot of that data so that we can, as a group, an organization, a paranormal community, go through all of our data and start finding correlation. Let me scroll down, see if I missed. Are some devices more sensitive to cell phones and others not? Yeah, you got to be careful because a cell phone can be very powerful and ping when it's looking for something that it's supposed to connect to. Say you got a smartwatch and say you turn off your cell phone, the Bluetooth on your cell phone, well, your smartwatch still keeps pinging. It just keeps pinging, looking for your phone. And I was at one investigation, and this guy, you know, he would put the K2 meter in his right hand and wave it around, nothing. He put it in his left hand and he would wave that around and he would get hits. Put it back in his right hand, nothing. Left hand, he would get hits. And he's like, the spirit's trying to tell me something about my left hand. I said, yeah, you're wearing a smartwatch. And he was not happy with me. And he told me that he had his phone turned off. And I said, yeah, that's because your smartwatch is still pinging, trying to find the phone. And when they ping, it is a very strong EMF because it's trying to reach out as far as it can to find it. Now, once it finds the phone and it's able to connect, then the rest of the communication is a much weaker strength EM field. Let me see if I missed any. Where am I? Cell phones. Okay, so we had a moment when every single REM pod went off at the same time. I kind of get a red flag on that one. That tells me that maybe there was a burst of EMF from something. Um, I mean, it could very well have been paranormal, but I would have been concerned that maybe um, there was something, a Wi-Fi router sent out a burst. Maybe somebody had a gateway that connects through 5G or what have you, and it sent out a burst. A microwave um, sent out a burst. So I would be careful with those. Just jumping to the conclusion that it is paranormal because that may have been just a large EM burst. And I know Rob was telling me about a situation where he dealt with a bad transformer out on the street, and when the street lights would come on, that transformer would send out a burst that was so strong it actually drowned out radio stations, so you couldn't even receive a radio signal. So the living side, huh? Looking for more questions. If not, I'll go back into the REM pod. I was also watching this YouTube video about the REM pod, and there's a lot of people out there that have their shows and they're trying to describe how devices work. I've yet to find one that's accurate. Not trying to be a jerk or anything, but I haven't. And one of these people that had a pretty good size audience and a large platform. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but this is the enclosure for a REM pod, right? It's a PVC pipe. You could get it at the hardware store. This person said that all these nubs were the proximity sensors. And I'm like, they're not proximity sensors. It's part of the plastic. It's so the pipe fitter can get his pipe wrench around it because it's round and grab a hold of it and tighten it up. Can I share what those 6 inputs are? No, that's my secret sauce, and then I'll have everybody and their brother trying to copy it. I've already got people out there trying to copy it. I've got one guy that contacted me, said he was successful in copying it, and I looked at his product, and it was a motion sensor. He had a motion sensor pointed left and right, and I'm like, "I don't use motion sensors in mine. How did you accurately copy it?" Um, so, yeah, be careful, folks out there. There's a lot of people trying to copy it, and they're making them blue. They're calling them epic and things like that. I am going after them because epic is actually trademarked through the trademark office that has come through, and I need to shut them down. I did shut one fella down on Etsy. We sent him a cease and desist order. And he laughed at us. So we went to Etsy and Etsy shut him down. He got mad and fought with Etsy, and Etsy just closed his store down. Um, so I mean, just be careful out there. A lot of these people are selling stuff. I mean, if I see another coffin-shaped REM pod, I mean, the only reason these people are selling these gimmicky items is for money, right? They're just gimmicks, and it's nothing more than a junior thermos that you can buy off Amazon. Most of you know that, and from there, they stuff it in a whatever a coffin box or whatever and sell it to you for $100. Um, They work, but understand that the Junior Thurman sold by Mad Labs is a kit meant for kids to get them into electronics. So it's not designed to be very accurate or uh, credible, to be honest with you. The 555 timer that comes with it is super, super cheap and glitches out. A lot of good builders that I know will replace that 555 timer with a good Texas Instruments 555 timer. Now, the cool thing with if you buy a good quality one, it'll come with brownout protection. What brownout protection does is when the voltage gets too low, it'll just shut that circuit off. Now, we know that this problem is with the REM pod and a lot of the REM pod clones out there. When the voltage gets low, they go crazy, right? And you don't know if you're talking with a spirit or if this thing's just going nuts. That's where a good quality 555 timer with a brownout protection comes in very, very handy. I did make the cha-ching sound. I absolutely did. I have it stored on here as a file. What else? Yeah, so I live near Iowa State University, and they were selling those, like, heart rate machines that you go to the hospital and they put all over you, and then when you die, it goes, "Boop," right? And I wanted to get one, but the one they were selling didn't have all the attachments to it, and they wanted, like, 700 bucks for it. But yeah, Mark, I would love to get something like that just to check, and Rob and I have talked about this, just to check the human body's response. I know we say we feel something, we say this, but are we really, is our body really responding? And that would be a cool way, I think, to monitor that and collect some data. Money, 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 money. Sorry, I'm reading the chat to see if I missed any questions. Echo one, equipment placement. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's a good topic. I I have been to quite a few public haunts. I get invited to those, and I see everybody put all of their equipment on the coffee table, and I'm like, "Are we having a paranormal yard sale? What's going on here?" Um, you got to be careful putting equipment so close together because you'll get radio jamming, and it you gotta mix and match them, really. So if you put a REM pod next to a Mel meter, you're gonna have problems because they both have the same circuitry in them for the REM pod portion of it. They're both generating an EM field, and when you get those 2 close together, you could get false positives, or you could just lock them out. And that's a problem when we are looking at very subtle changes in the environment. I like to use the invisible candle metaphor. We're not looking for a huge change in the environment, very subtle, and you don't need to screw yourself by sticking two devices together and that are similar and radio jamming them. Now, you could put a PIR sensor next to a REM pod because PIR is looking at infrared and not EMF. You could put maybe like a ultrasonic device next to a REM pod, right? Because that's using sound and not EMF. You just don't want to put like a K2 or something next to something that's generating EMF, or another device that are similar next to each other. Like I've seen people point PIR sensor devices at each other, and that's probably not a wise decision because you've got two PIR things pointing at each other, and you might start getting false positives that way. How far apart is ideal? Probably around 6 feet. Especially for, I mean, that's a safe distance because the REM pod and similar devices like that, the EM field around them is not that huge. I think for a REM pod, the most you can get is 9 to 12 inches. So yeah, being 6 feet apart will, give you a good distance from one another. Ultrasonic, does color affect the bounce back? No, no, color won't affect the bounce back, but blocking or putting it on a hard surface like a floor or a table will cause problems that you'll get like an echo effect that comes back through it. And I'll use the piccolo as an example. And Zach's book, if you set it like this, and this is where the ultrasonic sound comes out, you may have problems because you're going to get a bounce back off of this hard surface. What you want to do is move it out to the edge because it's shaped like a cone and it will be able to cone out freely from there. Whereas here, if it tries to cone out, it's going to hit this book and you're going to get slapped back and you're going to get all kinds of weird readings off of it that you can't really explain. Maybe they're paranormal, maybe they're not. I see that a lot with the ultrasonic or the paranormal music box that's out there. The fancy one, $400, got the tumbler on it. People will just set that on the floor or set that on a table, and it starts going off and acting weird, and they think maybe there's some movement causing it to go off. But in reality, there's probably a good chance they're just getting an echo effect off of that hard surface, causing it to go off. PIR color? No, because it's in an infrared and it's looking for passive infrared is interesting because It's looking for the surface to generate its light. Even though I mean, we can see visible light, but we can't see heat light, and that's what infrared is looking for. So the color should not matter as much as the temperature of the surface. Now, PIR will not detect air temperature. Okay, it goes right through air and it looks for the surface of something. It has to bounce off a hard surface. It's so if you're trying to detect cold spots with a PIR, that's not the way to go about it. You're going to need a temperature sensor like a thermocouple to stick into the air, and that will read air temperature. But even like a FLIR, you know, IR camera, thermal camera, that's bouncing off of surfaces. It's not going to read air temperature. It's going to read surface temperature of whatever the structure is that you're pointing it to. Proper usage of the Epic box. Keep it stationary. You could set that on a table. That's not going to affect it. I wouldn't set it on anything metal. Um, and the same thing with a REM pod because metal will reflect EM. It will just kind of like a mirror reflects light. The electromagnetic field will bounce off of it, and you could get a super sensitive situation, right, where you're getting more EM than what's really in the atmosphere. And same thing with like the Epic box, it could cause some false readings there, or maybe even like a radio jamming situation where you're getting, you know, EM coming this way from the environment, and then you've got EM bouncing off of the metal, and then you get a situation where they add up, and the magnitude of the EM changes, and you just have a lot of problems with that. You wore a black hoodie and the ultrasonic didn't see you. That might have been because the hoodie was very soft and did not bounce the sound back as well as a hard surface would, possibly. Color shouldn't matter. I mean, a white soft hoodie would do the same thing as a black soft hoodie. While I'm waiting for questions to come through, I can talk about cameras and compression. Um, Abandoned slaughterhouse, so hopefully not too much metal. Yeah, probably should be fine. I've seen some videos where folks would. I saw one video where I thought it was a mirror they put the REM pod on, but when they came through with regular light and not the infrared light, um, it was a metal plate that they had the REM pod on, and I was like, yeah, they know what they're doing. They're being a little mischievous there. Outside of my equipment, what is your favorite piece? I like my Zoom recorder for EVPs. I use that a lot. Um, I have the H4n, so it can 4 channels. It'll run 4 channels, and I can input to uh, quality studio microphones into it, and I've captured a lot of EVPs off those studio microphones, condenser mics. So I like being able to use that. I used to use a mixing board, a little portable mixing board, but it's just so much handier just to plug it right into the recorder and let that do its thing. Okay. Just scanning over here at questions. Oh, the compression that I started talking about. I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube, right? The famous one with the baby in the crib and the ghost that walks through the room. That is caused by low compression. And if you have a dark outfit on and you have a dark background, what the compression does is it reduces the size of the file and it starts taking individual pixels and blending them together to make one larger pixel. So if the colors are similar, they'll make that one big pixel, right? So what happens is if you're wearing dark clothing and a dark background, you kind of blend into the background and you get this ghost-like effect. So I see a lot of that on Facebook and what have you, where people are like, "Oh, I captured a picture of a ghost," and I'm like, "Yeah, that looks more like somebody was wearing a black hoodie and standing in the room with a black background with poor compression." So when you buy cameras, you're going to want to get a good camera that has very good compression. The cheaper, the stuff you get off AliExpress and what have you is going to have probably the worst possible compression. You'll catch more ghosts that way, if you will. But the higher quality cameras that have better compression and true 4K resolution. So a lot of, especially the cheap cameras, they'll really be 1080p and they blow them up to a 4K size, and then they claim that it's 4K when in reality it's just 1080p blown up. All right, sorry, scanning for more questions. I do appreciate everyone's input. This is a first go at it, so I wasn't sure how this would go. Hopefully I'm answering a lot of your questions. Um, Batteries aside from lithium, best brand? Yeah, I mean, buy name brands. So batteries are weird. A long time ago, apparently the our government didn't require batteries to have a standard capacity, so they just sell them as 9 volt AA, AAA, right? They don't tell you the capacity. Now, later, with like rechargeable batteries, they were forced to give us a capacity. So when you buy batteries from the dollar store, yeah, it's a 9 volt battery. It'll give you 9 volts, but they don't make any promises on the capacity. So that 9 volt battery may last 30 minutes, it may last an hour. You don't know. The name brand stuff, but I know it's more expensive. Batteries are expensive. And that's why I'm trying to make everything with rechargeables on mine. Um, they they hold to a standard and they will give you the best capacity possible. Well, thank you, Alan. Are the amp camera filters? Yeah, that's a tough one. There is a company. I'm going to Google it real quick that will convert cameras into IR cameras. I'm going to Google it real quick so I give you the right info. It's Pixel something, Pixel Logic maybe. Lifepixel.com. Yeah, they will take your camera and convert it into a true IR. Thanks, Ken. Hello, Candy. Hello, Tori. Um, yeah, LifePixel does a pretty good job of converting your cameras. They sell cameras that are already converted, and they convert just about anything. So even GoPros. I know there for a while, GoPro was selling cameras that had a night vision function, a switch or what have you. Then they got away from it. They will take your GoPro and convert that into infrared night vision camera. Hey, Derek. Any other questions? Devices, how to use them properly, or how do they actually work, that sort of thing. I would love to answer those. And yes, go see Kent's show, Paranormal Addicts, tomorrow. Yeah, a lot of the conversions are just taking out the IR filter. But I don't know if that's what they do, if they switch and put in a different kind of filter rather than just removing the one filter. Um, but the cool thing is they warranty it. So I don't want to take apart like a $500 GoPro and break it trying to get the filter out. Well, Ken, I wish I could talk for hours, but my mouth goes dry and then my voice starts to crack, which I think it's already doing. Of my equipment that I've developed, what is my favorite? Man, it's actually going to be the Piccolo EMF music box. I know you probably expect me to say the Epic box, but it'd be the Piccolo. Um, because I like that it's a three-axis EMF meter, and you get true magnitude, and I've had a lot of good hits off of that. No, Mark, my new gear, we're working on the Orbis right now. We ran into here's the circuit board is not completely populated, but we ran into some issues in both the hardware and the software that I got to get fixed. I do not like the vibration sensor that I originally had for this. So we're going to change that out to a three-axis accelerometer. I've already got a prototype of that. I'm really happy with it. It's really good. I can set the Orbis about 2 feet away on a table and just lightly knock, and it'll pick it up. So I'm pretty happy about that. And then we're also working on so the Orbis, what it is, it's a proximity like a REM pod, but it's my own design. It has 6 lights, not the 4, so I can differentiate it so people don't think I just stuck in a junior Thurman in here. Um, and notice something about it for a REM pod, if you will. There's no antenna. So my design is such that you will not have an external antenna to worry about that breaking. Oh, the 10K price tag on the Orbis, it's worth $10,000. I'm sorry, but no, that was just a placeholder for. I had to put a price in there, and I didn't want anybody buying it, so I just stuck a really high price in there to get it out there for SEO reasons and website reasons, and create a buzz. But I didn't want anybody buying it. But if you want to buy one for 10K, I will sell you one for sure. And then after the Orbis, what else I have that we are I'm at a crossroad to either work on a data logger, my own version of a data logger, one that's your 19,000 refund, um, one that actually records date and timestamps, or my own ITC device, radio device. I've got some big ideas for the radio. Do cell phones really have a sensor that apps all claim? No, the only cell phone or the only sensor in a cell phone is a uh, three-axis accelerometer, and that's so they know when you're tilting the phone in different ways for when you play games. That is the only sensor in there. And I know that Apple actually blocks developers from reading EMF. And that came from a long time ago when smartphones first came out. People were freaking out about giving themselves cancer in the brain for having the phone so close. So Apple blocked you from reading EMF, period. So anybody, at least with an Apple, I know, claims that they have a EMF meter in their phone. It's just for entertainment. So when you say a quiet ghost box, are you looking to reduce the static in the ghost box or just turn it down, Tracy? Yes to all of the above. Um, yeah, so when the ITC radio that I'm working on um, will have the ability to reduce the static some, well, all the way. And we're going to do it differently than the way everybody else is doing it. Most everybody else is using a DSP chip that has a built-in function that reduces static. That static, though, that it reduces is meant to be the electronic hum from musical instruments, especially like guitarists have a problem with like a bad hum, a bad ground that will cause noise. And these DSP chips have a built-in function that will reduce that. So what a lot of people are doing is they just use that and say this is going to reduce static, and it doesn't. But what we're looking to do with my new ITC radio Ghost Box is to use spectral subtraction. What that's going to do is it's going to take the FM and AM and shortwave frequencies. It's going to take a profile of that and add that. Look at that as from a spectral frequency standpoint, and then apply that forward and do spectral subtraction. It's really easy because FM noise is the same always, right? It doesn't change much. So you can get a profile of that and remove that from the static, and you know that'll work a heck of a lot better than just a DSP chip that has some built-in function that pretty much what everybody uses. Yeah, Rob's right with the white noise to be very important because a lot of the voices come through the white noise. So that's where I'll have a knob and you can adjust it. If you want to kill the white noise completely, you'll be able to do that. I don't recommend it because I think a lot of the voices come through the white noise. So you want to leave a little bit there so that you can pick up some of the voices that do come through. How the ultrasonic works. My device, the ultrasonic motion detector, it uses sound, high frequency sound, much like a bat would burst out, or a dolphin using echolocation. And it sends out a signal, very high frequency. It bounces off the object and comes back, and it's able to taken the time that it takes for it to come back and turn that into a distance. The longer it takes to come back, the farther away the object is. That's why I was able to put a meter on my ultrasonic detection device that would tell you how far away the object is. We've used that, Alan and I, at a couple locations, and got some crazy stuff. It would set quiet for a while and not do anything, and then all of a sudden it would start going nuts and then go back to being quiet for no reason. um, so that one is interesting. And when will I be bringing it back? It needs to be reworked because the way that I had it designed was not very manufacturer friendly. And I had to buy these 3D printed enclosures. I used SLS printing, not FDM printing, which is what most everybody uses, because I wanted something durable. SLS printing, I mean, you could drop that. It's not going to break. It's not going to shatter. It's very strong. But those enclosures cost me $80 to $100 a pop. So my new design will have to be manufacturer friendly. Yeah, the directional, that is the ultrasonic motion detector. And yeah, that's on our list to rework, um, because I do have a lot of folks asking for that one again. Yes, Rob's brackets there is pretty much how it works. Those are high quality graphics. Other old devices that I have, I started off with the REM puck. That one probably will not come back. The Orbis will replace that. The Orbis, the alarm on it will not be the screechy sound, the that you're used to hearing. It's going to play musical notes. So the closer you get to it, it'll play a different note. The idea is that maybe we can get better interaction if we have the spirit try to play a song, right? By moving closer and farther away and closer and farther away and playing different notes. Can it be the Jaws theme? We could make it the Jaws theme. The closer it gets, the faster the Jaws theme plays right up on you. Oh, Candy's talking about a custom box that I made for her. It was very difficult to make. It basically what it does is it has a camera, an infrared camera, and a microphone, a condenser mic built into it. And when EMF is detected, it turns on and starts recording for 6 seconds. I I do have that on my to-do list, but what I wanna do is make it, again, more manufacturer friendly. So we're going to create a device that will detect EMF and proximity, something like the Orbis. It will use Bluetooth and send that signal back to the camera that I'm going to create. And when that gets that signal, that camera will start recording, 6 or so seconds of video. What I'd like to do though is get it to where it will record 2 seconds before the sensor activates, and then so you get the a little bit before and the after, so maybe you can catch something there. Yeah, Candy's custom one it was tough to get. It was a nice old-fashioned radio that worked, so I didn't wanna mess with that, so I had a very small space to put all of the electronics in, and it was like a Raspberry Pi that I had in there. I had the EMF detection circuit and the camera circuit and the microphone circuit. It was really tough space to fit in there. Yeah, I think that one will be popular. I originally wanted to do it with a photo camera and just create a trigger that so it would rapid fire off 3 to 6 photos real quick when it got triggered. But I've decided I want to make it a video camera. So the hard part there is I want to make it like I talked about before, a good quality camera with good compression and all that nice stuff, so that when you do download and watch the video, you'll get everything and not ghost people walking by. I do need to make a router that works for the library. Maybe I'll just do their whole internet over again. Any other questions from you folks? Maybe if I get over by the window, the big window on the other side, it'll be better. Maybe I could use my phone and it'd be better by the big window, but I'm in the middle of the library and I have one bar. Well, if there's no other questions, we're at almost an hour. Um, I will let all you good folks go, and I do appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate all the questions and all the interaction. And I plan on doing this about every 2 weeks. Um, and yeah, look forward to it. So in a couple weeks, the phone apps that claim to have SL, oh yeah, those don't have SLS. SLS is a very, very specific type of camera. It's not just a camera, it's a type of camera. It's very specific. And no, they don't have that. That's just for entertainment. And they definitely don't have the ability to read EMF like a K2 would have. All that stuff is just for entertainment. Um, so yeah, I'd be careful using that stuff. It's great for the people that want to go to a public ghost hunt because they saw it on TV and they want to get spooked and scared. It'll do that. It'll spook and scare you, and you'll get an adrenaline rush. But if you're really looking for evidence, that's not the way to go. All right, everyone. It looks like the chat is dying down. I appreciate it again, and you all take care. Good night.